I'm gonna talk into Logan's mic. Test riders have returned and they've been wigging out about these two bikes and they have some pretty interesting things to say. So I'm gonna get on the camera and they're gonna go for it. Tell us what you think, guys.
All right, so
hammer down, nailed to the wire, known by the sin of our fathers. Let it all come out and burn like a fire. We'll shout a little bit louder, 'cause the night still has 1,000 eyes. And when the truth is brought to light, you and I will be
like I said, this is my first time being on a Honda 2-stroke. I have spent significant amount of time on Honda 4-strokes, so this platform actually isn't that different to me. I actually really like this bike. It is really fun, has a ton of power, it's smooth, it's really planted, it corners really well. I went and did some technical sections, and while it's not, the gearing's probably not set up and it's a little bit harder, it still can grunt and get up really hard stuff. It goes really fast. I'm surprised for how old it is, how much power and smooth it is. I didn't even notice the vibration on the bike. So overall, I really like this bike. It is really fun. Kyle said as soon as I showed up, it's like, you've got a smile on your face. And that's a major sign or tall tale for us to say that we like the bike. Is it the best bike I've ever ridden? No, there are some things that I feel like that it's a too squatty. I'm hunched over on that a little too much. It could be just because of the handlebars. The other thing is it can't loft the front wheel as much as the other bikes I've ridden, which could be part of it being grounded, but that might not be a bad thing either, especially in technical stuff. You're not constantly bouncing everywhere. But I hit everything from whoop sections. I don't feel as comfortable with it going through whoop sections because of that planted feel. It feels like instead of wanting to stay on top, it wants to more plow through things, and it won't do it. But I bottom out this front fork easier than I do on this fork. It jumps really well. It hill climbs. I can't be at the bottom of a hill climb and get up to the top as easy as on this bike, but I still can get up there. I really like it. I really don't have a ton of bad things to say about it. I mean, for a 15-year-old bike, I was really surprised. And I'll go into the comparisons between the two, but let's get Logan's impression.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start out with the 250XC because that's what I rode first, and I'm not used to it. What's great about this for me is I'm not used to either of these bikes. So both of these 250s are new to me.
Because you're riding the XCW platform.
Yeah, I'm on the 150 XCW, even though it's a KTM. Even though they're both KTMs, they're completely different bikes. The 150 XCW is a completely different bike. So for me, going off on the 250 XC, that is a fire-breathing dragon. I know I said that this was angry power. That's real power. That's what power really looks like and feels like. This, and I'll jump away from that because the 250 XC was awesome. It's a phenomenal bike and it does a lot of things really well. I was telling Sam, the muscle memory is not the same for me. I'm used to working through each gear, riding the pipe really high and really having to work for it, where that you just shift up. You just shift up and give it gas, and you got to modulate the throttle more. But again, coming back to the Honda, it felt at home right away. Both the how squatty you say it is, it felt great. I've learned that I don't like the forks as much, and then there could be some tuning to it. Like you said, it's heavy on the front end. It doesn't want to loft the front wheel. It feels heavy. But other than that, I actually really liked it because you have to, it's that whole, you have to work through the gears. I feel like I had to work through the gears more. I had to modulate the clutch more. It felt at home with the 150 XCW platform that I'm used to working with. It felt right at home. And it was like the best mixture between my, you know, the Honda platform that I was used to with my CRF and the XCW that I'm used to working with now. It's actually probably the next step between the two bikes that I have to get to the 250 XC.
Absolutely. And so now to compare both of them. So the power, it was the first thing that I noticed. The power on this really is refined. And on the 250 XC, the KTM 250 XC, the power on this thing is incredible. It has a lot of power and it's very smooth. And the whole bike overall is super smooth. The balance of the bike, the suspension just feels like it's a chiseled race car. Where this feels like almost like an old dragster.
Manual.
Where you gotta steer with the rear wheel and the power the whole time. But that is fun. It's really enjoyable.
It's more raw, is what you're
It's
saying.
way more raw. And there's some fun to that. If I was on a long ride and I needed the finesse of going slow and just doing it, it would be this bike hands down. If we're out burning through the desert in high speed whoops, it would be this bike. But if I'm just doing a turn track, I actually turned better on this bike than I did. Partially because this turns faster, so it dives into the corner. The balance point's way faster. Where this is slow, so I have to use the power to kind of get the bike to come around. So it feels more controlled to me, and then I use the power to come around. Where if I do the same movements with this, I just blow out my back tire too fast. I have to brake faster up front and then lean it in. Where this one I can kind of just let it roll over. Has a slower roll over than this. The brakes on the KTM are way better, 100% way better. The throttle, the gear, you know, the clutch, everything is just smoother. But it isn't bad on this. For a 13-year-old bike, I never felt like, oh, this is crappy, or I don't like this.
How did it run? How did the Honda run?
So, you know, we talked about maybe the carburetor maybe wasn't jetted right. It ran really good. Now we're at, what's the elevation here? 4,000 feet? 6,000 feet? Oh, I was way off. So it actually did really, really well. On the top end, bottom end, I went really slow on it. It would idle when I was going down the hill. It would kill on me a bunch. Yeah. Well, that wasn't that
dies.
big a deal.
We just need to adjust.
Yeah,
It dies fast.
But other than that, it ran amazing.
And it kicks on the first kick or two.
Kicks on the first.
Kicks off right away.
But I miss the electric start. And the front forks on this are way better. And the other thing is we talked about, like, you know, we talked about hill climbing with it. He said that he liked the bike better on hill climbs. Tell us why you liked it better on the hill climbs.
Yeah,
you said you liked it better overall.
Yeah,
You said you liked the Honda better than the KTM for your style.
For my style right now, again, because I'm coming from the XCW platform, the 150 specifically, it's geared, the way it's geared is I can give it a fistful of throttle. And this was the same thing. It doesn't have that snappy power. Like with the 250 XC, I feel like you really have to modulate or shift up or whatever. Where with this, I can come around the corner in second and just open it all the way up. And it kind of grunts through a little bit, but the power's there. It's got more power than my 150 for sure. It has more power, but it's not crazy power that has.
Yeah,
and
and
the
when
KTM has.
climbing up a hill, it was funny because this is a difference in just riding style.
Mm-hmm.
So with the KTM, I jump up the hill. Does that make sense? So
Popping
my
off
momentum's taking me, and that's why with the power, with this one, I'd go slower. I couldn't jump up things. It just didn't have that extra bottom and snap. And part of it's gearing, because this is an MX gearing versus the XC gearing. But so for me, like, that's the difference. And we talk about this with other guys that have like really soft suspension, is we like to bounce up stuff or jump stuff, wheelie stuff, and that slam into things. And so having the stiffer suspension actually works better in that scenario. So the faster you go, the better the bike works, which is this KTM.
Right.
But with this bike, I never felt like it did anything weird. I just felt like when I needed to go faster, it didn't just, the power, the suspension just didn't work with me. It worked against me a little bit. But you just slow down a little bit and pick your way, but it never felt like I couldn't do it or it was awkward or anything like that.
Yeah, and it wasn't scary. That's what I loved about this bike going up the hill, is I never felt like it was out of control. It felt very, like we've said before, it felt planted, it felt secure, it felt like you could ride through the gears, where occasionally on the XC, I would be bouncing, you get that bounce, and if you're not with it, if you're not ready for that, it can be a scary feeling. You can get a little whiskey, you can get a little pop sideways or whatever, where this was so planted, it felt secure the whole way up the hill. And it wasn't lacking for power, where my 150 will lack for power occasionally, where I'm like, there's not enough, I gotta shift. This had plenty of power through the gears. It felt so planted and secure that I wasn't ever scared on it.
Yeah.
Which is why I like this bike better than that one right now for my riding style, because it felt secure, it felt planted. I felt like I had more power than the 150. The only thing that I really didn't like is I couldn't loft the wheel.
Right.
When I wanted to. I can get air, but you really got to want it.
Yeah, it's a little harder to do it, but honestly, guys, I was really surprised how good it was. It reminds me back to when we jumped on that, was it 2017, the Scott's bike? The 2017 YZ250X. We just liked it. It was just a really fun bike to ride. And this bike, even it being 13 to 15 years old, is a really fun bike to ride. I really liked it. It sits lower than this bike, it feels fatter, but it doesn't feel really heavier, which I was surprised, because how much heavier is it on the scale?
Only 5 pounds?
The Honda is 3.5 pounds heavier than the KTM, and it has 3 pounds less gas and no electric start.
So not even that much though.
If the Honda was outfitted the same way, it would be approximately 15 pounds heavier than the KTM. 12 to 15.
But in reality, at 3 to 5 pounds is where it sits, and so that's not that much. And you know, being with the 18-inch wheel, I liked it. It has tubeless on it. I like that. All the mechanical, the cable stuff, it didn't bug me. The handlebars bugged me. It's too far over when I'm standing up, so I felt like I sat down on this bike more, and it's not as powerful as these new bikes.
Yeah, the two things that I was really surprised, because I said it immediately when I first got on the bike, was the raw power, the scary power, and then the vibration. And the funny thing is, I didn't feel the vibration at all. I don't know why. I don't know what
either.
I did not feel it at all. Where with the Beta, I felt, that was the first thing I said coming off the Beta, was I noticed that it vibrated. Where this one, I noticed it vibrated in the garage, but as soon as we get out here riding, it was gone. I did not feel the vibration, and it wasn't scary power. It was, I actually loved the power. Now, I think eventually maybe you'd want for more, but for me right now, this was awesome.
And honestly, like in the places where I feel like I wanted more is when I'm burning through a section and all of a sudden I come up on like a ravine and I need to get the front wheel up. This wouldn't do that. I have to just plow through it. Where this, I just and I get my front end up. So I can, that power. And the other thing is, we do this all the time when we switch between bikes, is depending on the different power differences, because this one has significant more power. I was blowing corners. I was going too fast into corners. I was coming up out of corners and wheelies. I was doing things where this one wasn't doing it, because it had such a planted feel. Like you said, you can come into a corner and just and it just wrap through it. And that's really fun and controlled, where I come into the corner with this and I do the same motion and I'm coming into up into a wheelie. So it's just a different power. I don't really know what the horsepower difference is, but it's not lacking for power. It's just how the power is delivered. It's a little bit more up on the top end, versus this has grunt immediately and it goes all the way through the whole power band.
See, and the top end's what I like.
You ride it more like a true, ride this more like a true two-stroke.
Yeah,
which is
just
fun.
like my XCW, the 150, you gotta be up on the pipe. You gotta be high, you gotta be, a little bit of clutch, a little bit of throttle, and then just open it. And that's my riding style right now with my 150, and this delivered. This
Okay,
is what
I
wanted.
got a question for you. Would you ride that if we had your 150 here in this terrain and this bike? Which one would you ride in this terrain? Because you can make an argument for the tight single track. This would be a little harder to ride because of the gearing.
Yeah. I honestly think I would take this. My 150 is so light, I don't think I'd feel as planted. Like I was coming around these and spinning the back wheel clear out way more than I've ever done with my 150. My 150 won't do that because it's not heavy. It won't slide the back tire the way that this did. I slid the back tire around almost every single corner because of how heavy it is.
And because it feels like it's lower, it's all control. I did the same thing. I thought I just sucked at being able to get my front tire out. With this bike, my rear tire out. With this bike, I could get my rear tire out all the time, and it was controlled.
Yeah.
I felt like a hero. I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm
sliding every corner.
I'm Colton Haker when doing some bad stuff, taking a corner at 70. Because it really, and I know that can be adjusted. I could get my bike, change the sag to get my bike to do that better. But this one was already there. And so out in this tight but flowy junipers in the desert, this is a really fun bike.
I would want this over my 150 right now. In this terrain, just like this would be more fun than my 150. My 150 would want to stand up. It wouldn't want to slide the corners. I wish I could loft the wheel, but other than that, it feels great.
And you can loft the wheel. I mean, you have to use this where you don't have to use any clutch. You don't have to use any seat bounce. You don't have to pull up. You just push the throttle and the front comes up. So for me, if I had to take a pick between these two, out here, I would pick this. I'd pick the KTM. The KTM is just the overall package of being balanced, poised, throttle, everything. It's a much higher step up.
Refinement.
It's just the refinement, like Kyle said, the balance, the power, everything. The bike does the work for you, especially when it starts to get more technical, especially when it gets, the faster it goes and the big whoops and smashing things, this bike takes it better than that bike. But man, is that a fun bike. To me, would be like one of those bikes where, like out here, I wouldn't be unhappy riding that bike out here all day. And now the tight single track, we don't know yet. We need to try it out here, but we went and rode some gnarly rocky sections and it did it.
It took it fine.
It was a little easier. I had to use a little bit more technique, and I don't like standing up on this bike as near as much as this. This bike, I want to sit down on, which equals bad technique as well, but
yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys.